So we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to National Whistleblower Center's second annual Tax Day panel. My name is Siri Nelson, and I am the Executive Director of National Whistleblower Center. I'm here in our office in Georgetown, and I'm speaking with Eric Hylton, who you may be familiar with from our other Tax Day panels. He is the former commissioner of the SBSE section in the IRS, and he's here to talk to us about contemporary issues that we want to know about in tax law today. So, Eric, please introduce yourself to our wonderful audience.
No, thank you, Siri, for that introduction and allowing me to speak about something that I have done for 30 years. It's tax day, April 18th, right? So for all the folks that's out there, you have about 10 hours. 10 hours to file that taxes or file that extension. But it is truly a pleasure to be here today. And thank you very much to the National Whistleblower Center for inviting me to talk about, behind the scenes of tax law and fraudsters and whistleblowers, all these different things that's been going on. And as we think about the complexity of the financial system, the tax law, it's an exciting, dynamic area. It really is. And I speak with passion because this is something that I've been doing for a long period of time. And it's something that relates to fraud, it relates to whistleblowers. I mean, a lot of experience in it, a lot of opportunity to really tell people, hey, how to file, what should you be filing? And there's also an exciting time because there is a growing movement and progression as it relates to whistleblowers across the board, not only just from a tax standpoint, but also from a money laundering standpoint as well. So I'm just extremely excited to be here today and talk about a number of those issues.
I'm so excited to talk about them too, but you kind of went around my question, which is, who are you? Why are we talking to you? And what makes you such an awesome person to learn about tax law?
No, I don't know if I can say awesome. I don't know. My kids, my wife might say that maybe he's not that awesome all the time. But no, it's so for the last couple of years, I've been working with ZMF Law Firm and working with an old friend, Dean Zerby, as a director of investigations for that. And the primary responsibility there is working on whistleblower cases. And that is just truly exciting just to kind of stay engaged in this arena. And I have to give 2-second kudos to Dean and Steve Cohn for all they've done for the Whistleblower Program from the inception. And it's just exciting to see not only from the beginning, and I was there looking at the law when it was being passed, and now to see the maturation of it as well. It's truly exciting. So with that being said, so I spent 30 years with the IRS, and people say, oh my God, 30 years. I was like, yes, I had a fantastic career. And the last 2 years, I was the small business self-employed commissioner. And so as the commissioner there, pretty large responsibility, one of the largest operating divisions within the IRS. It's probably one of the reasons why I don't have any hair. I had about 20,000 employees there. and so, but having responsibility over examinations for small and mid-sized businesses that are under $10 million. So roughly about 51 million taxpayers. And in addition, all the collection activity, as well as Bank Secrecy Act, as well as employment taxes. So a pretty large portfolio. Prior to that, I spent approximately 26 years as a special agent, federally sworn agent, and matriculated to the position of deputy chief, and having a workforce of about 3,000, and which is the 6th largest federal law enforcement agency in the country. And just kind of thinking about general tax fraud, international tax fraud, money laundering, narcotics-related money laundering, terrorist financing, asset forfeiture, undercovers. So the interaction that I've had with whistleblowers over the years has been extremely exciting. And as a part of that as well, was in charge of our international operations division for about 5 years within CI. So great career and great to kind of share that with folks along the way now.
Yeah, it's just, I think your career goes way beyond words, especially when you couple that with your personality, which I'm sure your family benefits from. I think they don't want to say it out loud. I know it's hard sometimes.
Hey,
But
man.
you know, it's kind of similar to taxes, right? We
Yeah,
all pay them, we all benefit from them.
exactly.
Most of us try to do our best to pay them properly, like we're doing on tax day today. Some of us intentionally don't do that, right? Some of us intentionally avoid paying taxes, and some of us do it by accident. Some of us are engaging in things that we don't even realize are illegal. Maybe we've heard our friends are doing it, or maybe some relatives are doing it. And they look like they're saving tons of money, but at the end of the day, the taxpayers are the ones who are suffering, right?
Yes.
And that's what makes your career path so exciting. So tell us now, what's happening in the IRS world and in the world of fraudsters and whistleblowers that taxpayers should be aware of?
So great question. There's a lot happening, and I think about what is a lot of hot topics within the world of the IRS, in the world of fraud, in the world of whistleblowers. As I think about it, one of the key factors, and I'll hit on a couple of areas really quickly, and that is happening within the IRS first. And what's in the news right now is the IRS spending plan. And so maybe talk a little bit about that later, but that they've rolled that out and just kind of thinking about that. And we'll talk about potentially the impact to fraud and the whistleblower program. But what are the key fraud activities that's happening right now? And what is the IRS concentrating on? And it's first, I would say international. And I have a passion for international because first and foremost, we're talking about wealthy individuals who are trying to hide their taxes and whistleblowers who've helped with that. And so that is incredible, especially, and here again, I roll back and so when I first met Dean and him in partnership with Steve in bringing the largest whistleblower case award in the history of the IRS to Barry Berkensfield of 100 and something million. And so I was working on, and that kind of prompt and changed the landscape not only for the IRS from an international standpoint, but just looking at now as we take this back, it's approximately about $6 billion have been collected by the IRS. And so as we think about this, so international, and what's happening right now, just last month, Congress did a report and identified that Credit Suisse, one of the famous and larger Swiss banks, still was helping taxpayers and conspired with taxpayers for not declaring their bank accounts up to $700 million. I didn't say 70,000. I didn't say 700,000. I said 700 million. And so you think about that just happening just last month. And that's on top of them actually coming up and breaching their agreement from 2014, in which they only had they had to pay almost 2.6 or $7 billion for helping conspire with taxpayers across the board. And the key factor is, and which is really interesting from this, is out of that 700 billion, if it wasn't for whistleblowers, whistleblowers helped discover 300 million of that. 300 million of that 700.
For the people in the back. People are like, what do you mean whistleblowers are totally useless? We already know everything, right? The government is so smart. They already know everything. 300 of 700 million is not insignificant.
Not insignificant at all. I mean, it's pretty incredible when you think about the congressional reports. And it also, as I look at that as well, not only is this happening in Switzerland, it's happening throughout the world, because Credit Suisse, even expressed that Bank Leumi out of Israel is continuing these practices. So you have, in a sense, you feel like there's some sense of activity that is happening with these financial institutions around the world to help U.S. taxpayers hide their funds. Because I mentioned earlier, the Whistleblower Program brought in almost $6 billion, over the years. But an offshoot of that is the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program, in which billions of dollars were collected from that as well, all to help out the U.S. taxers and the U.S. government. So I think that's a great point. And I also like to see, whereas in another case in which they call the Singapore solution, there was an executive from the Swiss bank, private bank IHAG. He actually pled guilty for helping over $60 million of undeclared account. So here again, what is happening in the international arena as it relates to whistleblowers, there's a lot going on still happening as it relates to that. And that spins into another really high priority is high net worth individuals. And there's going to be a significant focus on that. The wealthy individuals that are trying to hide their funds, the IRS is within the spending plans spoke highly of that, as well as far as partnerships as well. But I have another area, and I'll ask you a question before I talk about this area. What's your favorite number?
My favorite number?
Yes, your favorite number.
5 million.
So I will say, I like 5 million as well. We love to have that, right? But so favorite number is 96. And I say 96 because the IRS is responsible for bringing in 96% of the revenues to this country. And you think about that and how important that is for democracy, for a civilized society, in order to be able to afford all the things that the United States and having a functioning government and a functioning tax administration. And so this next area that I think is critically important, and I've seen some cases related to this for whistleblowers as well, are employment taxes. And so 75% of that, that 96 is collected through employment taxes. So here again, all of this kind of comes in together, and it's important as we think about employment taxes and whistleblowers as well. So those are just some key areas that I think are going to be really important. It's happening in the world of fraud. It's happening in the world for whistleblowers. But you have to love that international, though. It's so amazing as we look at that.
Yeah. I mean, when you're bringing up the issue of how much of the pie employment taxes take up, it just brings to mind so many complaints that we have from people saying that, they don't want to pay their piece of the tax pie in their paycheck. And then we see these high net worth individuals, these super wealthy folks who are ostensibly legally skirting around taxes. And it results in a lower level of scrutiny for them because people don't question why they have so much disposable income, because there's an assumption that they have all these legal loopholes, which is not necessarily true. And especially when we look at it on the global level. So tell me, what do you anticipate the IRS doing with the 80 billion that it was recently, allotted by the government to fight fraud and to help whistleblowers bring useful tips, especially as it applies to high net worth individuals who are outside of the United States?
So you're going to see, here again is a great question, and everyone was anticipating this spending plan to come out, and the head of the Ways and Means Committee was saying, hey, I want to see this report, and everyone is talking about Secretary Yellen and saying, yes, roll it out, and they have a new commissioner for the IRS, so I was anticipating that plan would not come out until he was on board. And so with that, there's a lot there. It's a 150-page spending plan report, and a large portion of that, or of that 80 billion, is for enforcement, and which that means audits, that means investigators. But another key factor that's in that are data scientists. The IRS is pivoting towards working smarter by having data scientists come on board to analyze that and look at real issues of non-compliance. And this is the first time that I have seen this emphasis on data sciences. Now, for our audience here. And so the question probably as well is like, how much is the whistleblower office getting? So everyone's probably saying, well, is the whistleblower office going to get additional funding? Now, within the spending plan, there is not a line item as it relates to just the whistleblower itself as far as, but I did attend a conference in which the head of the IRS Human Capital Office did talk about just dispersing resources and different things of that nature, and actually mentioned the whistleblower's office and thinking that they were getting additional resources. So hot off the press that, you know, they should be getting some additional resources for that. But the key factor as we look at this spending plan and how the enforcement that's going to happen there, you're going to see an increase as it relates to high net worth individuals with the number of enforcement agents. So you're talking special agents, you're talking revenue agents, and you're also talking about, they have like correspondence audits and different things of that nature as well. But as a high net worth individuals, they're going to see a significant increase as it relates to that. So now I will add one other last point. Now, I was a little disappointed as I look at the spending plan and how things were appropriated. Only like 3.7 was assigned to modernization. I think as we move forward, you know, there's a strong discussion as to that balance between investing into your IT infrastructure versus bringing on personnel so that you can work smarter, so they can have the latest tools. You know, I remember having a discussion years ago. It says, well, do you hire agents or do you bring on computers? Well, if I hire agents and they don't have computers, what are you doing? Or the latest techniques? So what is that? So I'm hoping that there's some reappropriation of some of those funds to include more of a towards the IT as well. So
yeah, and we're definitely going to touch on some tech related issues later on in this discussion. I wonder if there are any considerations that you have in mind where it comes to whistleblowers who are also potentially analysts and who are seeing things happening on the internet. For example, you know, Instagram feeds that look a little too generous or certain types of, I think I remember there was at one point, not reporting fraud, but folks who were following Elon Musk's jet around using publicly available information. So with whistleblowers like that, do you see there being any capacity at the IRS to receive this type of information? Or do you think this is the kind of investment that needs to be made at the IRS? I know this is kind of an ad hoc question, so feel free to.
You know, it goes into, you know, obviously you want to have an allegation, but you also want to have some documentation to go against that with that allegation to be able to, because I'll tell you this, and you know, from time to time, you know, everyone they say, well, who do you work for? I work for the IRS. Oh, my neighbor. Or, you know, with the, you know, to your point with social media, you do see quite a bit that is out there. And I would probably say, yes, there's probably some initial indications, but hopefully we have some corroborating evidence to kind of go along with that. And so the IRS can actually take a look at it, because you're still dealing with limited resources. Now, the IRS, what you will see, and which I think is going to benefit whistleblowers, is the fact that the IRS is thinking about hiring about 30,000 people over the next couple of years. So they have to have some work to do, right? So one of the challenges that has been in play for the IRS as relates to whistleblowers is potentially lack of resources. And so you're going to have some additional resources. So you should see an increase in the number of whistleblower cases coming forward and claims. So definitely an encouragement in that factor.
What do you think about the myths that this IRS spending bill will create an army of belligerent agents who will knock on every door to get the last set of somebody's not reported paycheck?
Yeah. I've heard all that, you know. So as a federally sworn agent who carried a gun and I was on a panel once and people were talking about, hey, what about these 87,000 gun-toting agents that's coming out here? And that's just the furthest from the truth. Out of the 70 or 80,000 employees, you're talking about 3,000 or 4,000 that's with IRS criminal investigations. They're the only one who has the authority to carry a weapon. So that is not going to be the case at all. You know, that I think that was just some political pundits to some degree, you know, putting out the rhetoric. I think you're not, you'll see the same fairness, quote unquote, with the IRS. And I honestly, it got to a point where, you know, just having some discussions with some of the IRS, you know, my IRS colleagues, it almost got to more of a dangerous point of now you have, you know, if the taxpayers believing that you have this gun-toting agent that's coming out, you know, so they're thinking that you have this situation where I need to carry my weapon, you carry your weapon. It could be, you know, a really dangerous situation. So, you know, I'm glad that has settled down quite a bit, because it was like, wow, we're hearing that consistently. But the key factor is this: the IRS has been starved for the last 10 years. I mean, almost 30% of their workforce, you know, over a 10-year period, and reduction in their budget. So everyone needs a fully functioning tax administration, and, you know, for democracy, for the society. So I do think that's important, that as we look at this 80 billion, and that's on top of their appropriations. So it is a way not only to modernize, but to ensure that everyone's paying their fair share.
Yeah, I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to ask you that question, because every time I hear this myth and this misinformation, I think of you. So like I hear them saying these things, and then I see your face in my head, and I'm like, I don't see how this is lining up, but I get the fear. And I really appreciate that you pointed out how dangerous this fear can be.
Right.
For people who are really on the ground, for, you know, for the public that now feels completely on edge, like they're in danger, but also for the people who are employed by the IRS, who simply want to make sure taxpayers get every dime and nickel and cent that they're entitled to. And also, usually, like you said, the focus is on high net worth individuals. The average person isn't the big target for the IRS, because they're not really the core of the tax gap. So going back to the whistleblower program, what are some of the proposed changes on the horizon for the whistleblower program?
So this is, here again, it's just to kind of see the progress of the program overall. And so first, I would say a great change has happened. And it's, I mean, I think it's a true step forward. And I give a lot to the leadership within the IRS for this appointment. So you start off by having Mr. John Hyman, who's now the new director for the whistleblower office, and comes with a lot of a great reputation. Spent 39 years with the service, but a key factor, he comes from one of the compliance functions. So that is, as we think about the complexity of the tax laws, I sit here and we have conversations and we're talking about basis shifting, corporate tax, different things of that nature. You really need to have personnel in there to understand that. Now, based on my background, I always say, let's break it down so it's like explaining it to a jury. So as far as that submission is concerned, but I think that is a key factor for the change within the whistleblower program. And he's already started, you know, working the circuit out, speaking, and also talking about just the collaboration he's having with the business operating divisions and criminal investigation, and working with them, which is exciting, which is truly exciting, because the IRS whistleblower office can be a linchpin to non-compliance, because you have information that's coming in that the IRS is not aware of. They're just not aware of it, because as you think about the complexities of things, and you need an insider to really kind of tell you how things go. And a 2-second story is, you know, years ago, you know, I was first starting off working as a special agent, and they would say, well, who's working the informant line or the whistleblower line this week? And I would always raise my hand that, yes, I would love to do it, because you learn, but you also see what is happening there. Now, also through the National Whistleblower Center, as well as the Taxpayers Against Fraud, just that advocacy in conjunction with Congress, you're looking at the IRS Whistleblower Improvement Act, which I think is going to be fantastic as far as the improvements to, if passed, improvements to the service and the program as a whole. Because one of the first key factors is, like, when a taxpayer or whistleblower comes in and they have to appeal their case to tax court. And there is now, based on this bill, it could be a de novo review standard of review standard versus what is an arbitrary or capricious review. And what does that mean? So with the de novo review, it allows you to bring in all the information. Of course, the court is going to look at the law, the new information, and give a full review of the case. Now, as a taxpayer, you want that. You want that. Versus an arbitrary review, whereas, okay, you kind of look at the administrative file and see if the IRS has done something, that they weren't supposed to do. Is that really due process? I don't think so. So, and I think the congressional intent was always for it to be an independent review. So that is critical for that. So glad to kind of see that it being put in there as well. Also, the presumption of anonymity is a key factor as well, because as I talk to whistleblowers, they're consistently asking the question, can I remain anonymous? For various reasons, because I don't want to lose my job, or I feel threatened, or I feel this or that. And so as they appeal their case all the way to tax court, can they have that presumption of anonymity as well? In addition to making sure that whistleblower awards are not hit or barred based on budget sequestration. and so you don't want that political football as to whether that should be awarded or not. So in addition to, I know my friends at the IRS probably don't like this other thought that I had in my mind as well, that if a whistleblower is, from the time that it's collected, that they should be paid within a year after that, or they get paid interest. Now, hey, if I file my taxes late, or if I do something late, the IRS requires interest on me. So hey, let's switch it around as well. So in addition to this, maybe just helping the improvement of the whistleblower annual report. I mean, I think it's very informative, but I think it can also help overall. So I do see all of those with John coming in. Hopefully this bipartisan bill will get passed. I think it'd be great for us overall.
Yeah, I'm just like, when we look at the whistleblower program, all the different issues on the laws that need to happen in order to improve it, right? Mm-hmm. And especially when you started talking about the presumption of anonymity, I thought about how, on one hand, we're afraid of IRS agents because of misinformation. But on the other hand, there are really dangerous people who can get charged by the IRS because they're engaging in financial crimes. And the whistleblowers who blow the whistle on those people who are actually armed and probably have committed other crimes, like, wasn't it Al Capone that got caught on tax fraud?
Yes.
These are the people that really do need the protection. The whistleblowers who have the courage. Oftentimes people who are somehow involved in the organized crime operation, right? Yes. Whether it's because they're the spouse of someone, or because they're the child of someone, or somehow a witness, maybe they work in a household. Who knows the details of how they got this information? But when somebody is doing criminal activity, they are actually dangerous, and their whistleblowers need to be protected with anonymity. And that needs to be something that carries through the whole court proceeding, so that if you get denied an award, you're not prevented from going and appealing that because you don't want to get killed. So that's something that's really important in that law. And the de novo review, we've been targeting for who knows how long, right? Like looking at it like, why does the IRS get arbitrary and capricious? Why can't we review these cases and see if they're actually fair? And if they're so fair, let the judge affirm that this was a great decision. It's fair. I looked at it from head to toe. It's wonderful. Rather than looking at it and saying, well, I trust the IRS.
Yes.
Did you do something really wrong here, or are you just a little unhappy? So I really see, I love how you walk through some of those concerns, and of course we could talk about the amicus briefs and everything that we've been filing and everything, but we do have so much timely things to talk about, right? So if we have time, we'll get to that. And I also want to flag for the people who are attending, again, thank you so much for joining us today. We do see there are some questions coming in. We'll be addressing them in about 15 minutes as the last part of our discussion. So keep those questions and stay tuned to hear about our answers. I'm sure Eric will have some great ones. So talking about crime, one thing that's really exciting is that the recent anti-money laundering whistleblower program has been improved at FinCEN, thanks in a large part to NWC's work and the work of other advocates, including folks that you're associated with and yourself, Eric. So thank you for supporting this AML improvements. And so the improvements allow more whistleblowers to come forward because it incentivizes them through rewards and harmonizes the system that they'll go through in FinCEN. But IRS also has jurisdiction to address the anti-money laundering provisions, right?
Yes.
So if a whistleblower doesn't go directly to FinCEN, they can also go through the IRS. And what would you say about the program? How are they connected? How are the IRS Whistleblower Program and the new AML program going to work together? And what do you foresee in terms of outcomes?
No, I see a lot of collaboration. Let's just start there. I mean, I think between IRS, there's already a strong relationship between FinCEN and IRS. When I was with IRS CI, we had a liaison at FinCEN as well. And then as well as when I was with SBSE Commissioner, we worked with FinCEN quite a bit on Bank Secrecy Act and compliance checks. So I think that relationship is just going to be extended to the whistleblower office as well. But I think it's important here again, I come up with this theme as relates to whistleblowers. Now is the time. Now is the time to actually bring forth, because you're across the board, because you think about not only the IRS program, now you have this new anti-money laundering program with FinCEN, but you got SEC, you got CFTC, SEC collecting almost 4.6 billion, CFTC billions and millions, I think. And then you got even the False Claims Act, $700 billion. I mean, so all in helping of taxpayers across in the US as a whole. But if you think about this new anti-money laundering whistleblower program, I have to give kudos to FinCEN first and foremost. I've been there with the government, and you see new legislations come up and you have to start something from scratch and you're trying to figure out how to do it. And they've done a great job just circling the wagons. I've had an opportunity to speak with the director and as well as some of the other employees there, and they have done yeoman's work thus far as it relates to the anti-money laundering program. And as I think about, they've already set up an FinCEN whistleblower office, started hiring personnel, started looking at implementing regulations and thinking about, okay, what are the next steps? Already start taking tips from individuals and really thinking about it. Just brings it full circle. So now you have tax, you have security fraud, commodities fraud, and now you have money laundering. And money laundering is a big, that's a big pool. And as you think about Bank Secrecy Act, and then Congress only enhanced it further as we think about the Russian invasion. Okay, and looking at sanctions violations, or what we call IEPA violations, and the Foreign Narcotics Drug Kingpin Act. And so all of these now, if you have these Russian oligarchs and there's some familiarity as to where the assets are, wow, that's a pretty impressive case. And so that's really when you see the new program and the expansiveness of it, it gives I kind of look at it as a whole government approach to addressing fraud and using whistleblowers as a true linchpin to help with that. And because we need that whole of government approach as we address that, because we need those insiders to provide us that information. And this new program with FinCEN, I mean, I think it's just going to help us a great deal address many of the issues from a KYC perspective. I mean, we're starting to see it, and I hopefully we will talk about crypto as well. And looking at that, and because crypto is kind of being the wild west to some degree, and you needing regulation as it relates to that. But also you still see financial institutions who don't have a good anti-money laundering program, or you got money service businesses that are out there. So there's so much there that whistleblowers and insiders, if they know of this, what is going on? We had some, in a number of different industries, the marijuana industry, different things of that nature. So it's been pretty fantastic to see, this new program and how it's expanded. And all I can think about is, where will we be in 10 years? And think about what is collected. So no, that's exciting to see this new AML, the AML Act. So, and you get about almost up to 30%. So that's,
Yeah. The AML Act, it reflects the Dodd-Frank Act, which is, you can report anonymously, and you get a mandatory award of from 10 to 30%. So if your tip results in a successful action, then you will get paid. So that's a really good thing that you point out. Okay, so here's something that's on the top of my mind regarding the whole money laundering and some of the words that we use for us who are always talking about this and who are like obsessed with it and obsessed with oligarchs and kleptocracy and all of these all these really weird words, right? So like KYC, right? Know your customer, right? There's another term, CYA, that I think more banking people are familiar with. Sometimes those things go hand in hand, cover your, backside. So we've got know your customer. We've got, kleptocracy, which is basically, a society that's built off of fraud and the wrongful distribution of illicit funds. And we've got oligarchs, who is just a way to talk about people who have way more money than they legally should have, right? And they use it to wield political power. But how about, what is money laundering? How does a person know that what they're seeing is money laundering and not just, for example, tax evasion or another form of violation? It's kind of confusing for whistleblowers to figure out where they should be reporting.
Well, I think the aspects for whistleblowers, because I like to keep things simple, right? And if you see, or you're thinking that you see some type of fraud, keep that in mind. If it's some type of fraud and potentially, everyone says, oh, okay, it may be money laundering. Of course, the definition, or you kind of look at, well, in the simplest terms, you have a drug dealer who has this illegal money, and he says now he owns a car wash or a laundromat, and he brings that money into that. It's definitely more, and it's a lot more sophisticated than that. But that, from the simplest terms, is helpful. I like to try to express to people, leave it to the experts to identify and think about. But if you're seeing fraud, if you're seeing two sets of books happening out there, if you're seeing an individual that their lifestyle goes well beyond what they're seen to make, and they're involved in, potentially insider trading or some other fact. The key factor for money laundering is that you have to have a specified unlawful activity, which really kind of hits on a lot of different frauds. So you have that as a base. And then, all right, what do they do with the money after that? And then you get into the money laundering aspects, because it's a fascinating area, and it goes across all fields. Whether it's narcotics, I've seen it in terrorist financing, I've seen it in insider trading, I've seen it in market manipulation. It's just wire fraud. So there is a lot there, but I try to express to people, if you think you have fraud and it doesn't smell right, hey, let's have a conversation.
I think that's a great approach, especially, I mean, even when we look at something like wildlife trafficking, like
Yes.
we see people selling extremely rare and exotic animals that should not be for sale. It's illegal to sell those animals. And
Right.
that money that is being obtained through those sales needs to be concealed somehow, right? You can't just
Exactly.
report it to the IRS and say, hey, I sold 20 million cheetahs and that's how I got rich. You might have cheetahs all over your Instagram or on your Facebook page, but that's not legal. And that could be a basis for a greater investigation. So,
And I'll add this to this, and because it's a challenging factor for government agencies, because so I was in Singapore once, and I was walking down the street, and I saw a sign that said, "We can move your money around the world in minutes." So I took a picture of that and I gave it to my staff, and I say, look, this is what we're up against. This is what as law enforcement or civil authorities, tax authorities, they're up against, because, all right, I'm tracing the money here, there, and you're trying to launder the money around the world. And with globalization, that can happen pretty quickly. And so we need to adapt. And there should be increased legislation to help facilitate that in identifying.
that is such a great example, and also an opportunity to highlight that people around the world can make reports to the US government and be equally eligible for all of the whistleblower benefits. Right? So if somebody in Singapore knows more about that operation, they could call the IRS and file a complaint as a whistleblower, participate in the investigation anonymously, and then receive an award just as any other whistleblower would. So I like that you really brought up the globalization of financial crime, because it gave me a chance to bring up the globalization of whistleblower protection.
There you go. And when I was the director of international, I worked with the former whistleblower director, Lee Martin, and to really institute whistleblower programs throughout the world. And so he actually spoke to a number of different countries so they can institute a whistleblower program within their tax administration as well.
Yeah, and it's so important, especially the transnational collaboration.
Right.
So let's go back to the AML.
Okay.
Another transnational issue that you brought up earlier. And you know what that is? Crypto. Let's talk about crypto. Yeah. So what do you foresee happening as it relates to money laundering? You brought up you touched a bit on it, but tell us more in your views on how crypto will impact our perception of money laundering, financial crime, and also what people should do if they observe something. What should they be looking for?
So I think there's a lot happening in the crypto space or the digital asset space, from a money laundering perspective, Ponzi schemes, tax perspective. And, the challenge that is there is the fact that you have innovation, significant innovation, now coupled with, I call it fragmented guidance or regulation to some degree. And then it becomes more a definitional issue because, okay, so IRS looks at crypto or digital assets as property. So SEC says, oh, it's a security. Oh, CFTC says, oh, it's a commodity. Oh, FinCEN is saying, well, oh, it's kind of looked at as cash because you can do it as a money service business. And then as you look at the innovation, you go from a Bitcoin to Ethereum to smart contracts to non-fungible tokens to decentralized finance. And then, okay, whoa. If you're a consumer, you're asking yourself, what is this? And how do you really get involved? How do you identify that fraud? How do you identify? So I always tell people, because there's a lot of excitement, and I'm extremely excited about digital assets because I love the innovation. I love the whole thought of thinking about it from a global financial inclusion standpoint, and pretty much thinking about, hey, I can really touch a customer in another country pretty quickly without having certain intermediaries. But we need regulation associated with that, because there's certain red flags that may come about as to making sure that crypto is not being used for money laundering purposes, not used for terrorist financing purposes, and it's not used also for tax evasion. So you have that. The challenge, I think, globally, everybody's trying to define it. It has a certain bit of sexiness to it because everything happens to it. Oh, crypto. And then you have FTX. And then you're thinking about, this crypto winter, in the past, 8-9 months or whatever, you've seen trillions of dollars in market capitalization loss from crypto. I mean, I remember speaking about it at one point in time saying, yeah, crypto has almost $2 to $2.5 trillion market capitalization. And you're like, wow. Globally, I mean, and then the volatility of that, it just hit. And so then everybody's like, oh, yeah, I told you it's going to go away. It's not going to go away. The US government, the Chinese government, everybody's looking at even trying to develop their own central bank digital currency. All of these factors are going to stay in play. But as it relates to money laundering, we've seen so much of it. Because from a Ponzi scheme standpoint, or just, these initial coin offerings. So I know, I see we probably, I'm at 45, so I probably have to cut it, but.
No, I'm listening. I'm ready. I'm just letting our coordinator know that we will be ready to take questions in a second.
But so crypto, there's a lot of vulnerabilities as it relates to money laundering. It's a lot of, just recently, a crypto individual who owned a crypto company pled guilty for tax evasion because he created these tokens, and then he said, I'm going to create X amount of tokens, but then he created some new tokens and sold those, and of course he didn't report it. And because crypto kind of comes with this quote unquote sense of anonymity, and it's not. As you can look on the blockchain, you can maybe identify, there's so much there as it relates to crypto. And from a money laundering standpoint, I give kudos to IRS CI, because in their report, they have seized $7.1 billion in crypto. That is pretty amazing. So
thank you, IRS CI.
Right.
Because that's $7.1 billion of real people's money. So many people have been harmed by crypto scams. It is heartbreaking. Life savings gone, all sorts of very, very sad stories. So I'm happy to hear that.
Everyone has to do their due diligence. Whenever you have an asset class to come about, you still have to do your due diligence as it relates to that. And so it's just, with innovation, you have to have so much there. So I'll stop there as we wait for comments.
Yeah. I think the due diligence point is well taken. However, as you said, there's so many different regulations governing. It's hard for the average investor to understand what they're investing in, and the threshold for entry is so low. Yes. And it's like there's this kind of renegade mentality that's there that allows scammers and fraudsters to thrive. I remember I was in a group of professionals who were learning about crypto as an intro to crypto thing from an expert that one of these professionals knew, and that person was advising pretty much tax evasion and money laundering behaviors. They said, go find a crypto wallet outside of the United States. Here's the options.
That's a great point, because there's a serious concern. Obviously there's been an aggressive approach to combat international tax fraud and crypto, with the exchanges around the world, that could be an issue as well. So that is an outstanding point. So.
But especially for whistleblowers to know, what they're seeing, because the hard part is a lot of times people are blowing the whistle are, especially in the crypto space, are the ones who are already affected. And it's like, that's why I was so excited when you mentioned how much money had been, obtained, because these people who have been affected, a lot of times have no way of securing that money back. Everything's completely encrypted. They're not even really sure who their money went to. Like, there's so many layers to it. And I really do hope to see better regulation.
And we're starting to see crypto whistleblowers come in. We're starting to see that. And it's like, whoa, it's amazing, so.
And also on a recent news note, we've been seeing a lot of news about NDAs, right? So, these are something that are also being used in crypto companies and places that are like you know, startup feelings and there people, when people are seeing fraud in big tech or in crypto and NFT warehouses or whatever you want to call it, factories, they don't know that they can report. There is
Right.
no employment contract that can prohibit you from communicating to the government about your concerns about a violation of law, rule, or regulation.
There you
You
go.
go to the government. You can't necessarily go to Gawker or Intercept, but you can go to the IRS, to the SEC, the CFTC, or your local member of Congress. So please, please, please remember that. And as NDAs are being more discussed, I also want to highlight a really kind of silver lining to crypto, because clearly I'm very skeptical about it. Earlier this year, or actually last December, NWC was a beneficiary of an incredible example of a good use of these technologies. So there were a set of NFTs that were designed to recognize whistleblowers. They created augmented reality 3D monuments to whistleblowers.
Okay.
That you can take your phone and actually put it in space, into a space. It would look like the monument was 3D in that space.
Okay.
And there was an auction of these NFTs. The art house is called Art World, and they regularly give donations to nonprofit organizations that relate to the art project. And so NWC was a beneficiary of that. We did receive crypto donations that were then converted into cash immediately. But I want to actually give kudos to Art World for having such an innovative approach to a technology that may seem really scary at first. And I agree, Eric, it's not all bad, but there's a lot of opportunity for fraud there. So it's good that whistleblowers.
To that point, some of the crypto companies that's doing a lot of the analysis, like chain analysis, they're regularly come out with their crime reports. And roughly no more than about 5% of all crypto activities relates to crime. And so, but it gets a large a sense of attractiveness. And then, of course, FTX doesn't help. That didn't help anything. And so, but no.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the incredible thing about successful enforcement actions, right? They act as a deterrent. So what we're seeing with FTX and other frauds will stop future frauds from harming the public and especially harming retail investors. So I'm really keen to see what happens, and especially whistleblowers that might come forward knowing now, I hope you're watching and you know that you can report to the government regardless of what your employment contract says. We're going to make a big pivot. Are you ready?
Yes.
You have questions? Okay. So firstly, I just want to say thank you, Eric, for our conversation so far. The audience is going to be taking the wheel. I'll be reading their questions, but I just wanted to acknowledge how great this conversation has been, and thank you not only for this conversation, but for your experience and your service to the U.S. taxpayer and your continued service to all of us. So the first question we received was back when we were talking about how the spending plan would be used. And the question was, do you believe the IRS hiring will address PPP loan fraud, and that the tax supporting documents and a full review of the tax supporting documents that those applicants provided? So I guess it's is there going to be a deep dive into PPP fraud and understanding where the rest of the money that hasn't been recovered is?
No. So since the beginning, COVID was just a perfect storm. I mean, I think everybody has to recognize that. And so, but as it relates to the IRS and addressing PPP fraud, the IRS has consistently been a part of a number of different COVID fraud task forces throughout the country. I think each U.S. Attorney's Office in each judicial district has a COVID fraud task force, and IRS is a participant in that, and able to try to feather out fraud as relates to PPP. So that consistently has been a high priority for IRSCI, in addition to, I think, also looking at, certain, I think I saw some legislation as well, proposed legislation to be able to have some way whereas SBA and IRS can exchange some information as well to maybe identify some of these other issues, but definitely still going to be a high priority.
Yeah, because it's a massive amount of money, isn't it? That was.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So one thing that comes to mind as we've been talking about some pretty high level things, especially related to crypto, when it comes to the individual taxpayer and their filings, what is the main concern for them? Not the crypto scammer who wants to rob everybody else, right? We already know they should just be worried that someone will blow the whistle on them. But the person who maybe is a former FTX customer, or the person who
Yes.
recommended to their friends that they might actually purchase some crypto through FTX. What would you tell them in terms of their concerns in facing some sorts of penalties and what they should report to the IRS in order to avoid that, or what they should be looking out for?
So no, as it relates to crypto. So just to show you the importance and that the IRS is taking and looking at as far as prioritizing digital asset, it's on the front page of the 1040. And just I remember when it first came about and everybody was shocked because you think about the real estate that's on a 1040. I mean, it's pretty tight. You had to be really important to get on that front page. And so it kind of started initially kind of thinking about just kind of understanding universes and do you have virtual currency at the time and, cryptocurrency. So now it's kind of morphed into have you sold, there's some type of disposal to it. And so a lot of times when you think about crypto, it's just that exchange, whether you're doing from crypto to crypto or you're selling and different things of that nature. So that's what taxpayers have to kind of be concerned if there's some type of exchange, and there might be that will prompt a taxable event. So that's it's. If you have some questions, always I would say, you have your tax professional, they should be familiar. I delve into it quite a bit. So if folks need to call us, more than happy to assist.
So why do you think these are important issues to focus on? Why should the general public be concerned with what the IRS is doing, the IRS Whistleblower Program, or how crypto is being regulated?
Well, I think we should be concerned because here again, it's a new area. If I think about predictions, we will see consistent over the next year or two of individuals honestly being prosecuted for evading their crypto gains. I remember when Bitcoin 2017, 18, it went up to almost 20,000 a Bitcoin. And everybody's like, oh, we got instant millionaires. In the last year or so, it was up to 60,000 a Bitcoin. That is pretty significant. That is pretty significant gain. And especially, I mean, of course, I wish I was one of those people who, when they were giving away Bitcoin, would have taken one of those or at least invested. But I think that's really where individuals have to kind of think about, right? Well, if you have crypto, making sure you report it, what as far as prediction, I'm seeing, increased whistleblowers that's going to come into play as it relates to that. Increased regulation that's going to come into play, and then you'll have some stabilization, and that's going to be important for taxpayers because if you're investing, that stabilization allows you to be able to say, hey, I can trust what I'm investing in. So that's a key factor.
I agree 100%. That's one of the biggest reasons why whistleblowers are so key to making sure that our economy is stable. Because exactly. The only way we can have a stable economy is if everyone's following the rules.
Yes.
So final question.
Sure.
Tell me some of your predictions.
So what I do predict is so if you look at the IRS spending plan and they're saying, and there's a lot of conversations about whether you'll see increased audits. And so there's like, oh, no, you maybe won't see increased audits for individuals under 400,000. I'm not sure of that. And so part of my prediction is the fact that if you look at the fine print, they say it won't see increased audits based on historic levels. Now, so what does that mean? And so you think about, just as an example, maybe if they were auditing 1%, but it went all the way down to maybe 0.2%. So based on historic levels, maybe I can go back to 1%. So from a taxpayer standpoint, they're going to probably see that and there's going to be an impact. But the good thing is you need a functioning tax administration to whereas, I mean, and so that everybody recognizes, hey, I'm in compliance, right? Because as I'm going out and speaking and talking to a number of individuals, you started to get the drift that IRS didn't have enough resources to audit people. So I can potentially cheat. And that's not a good feeling. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing for tax administration. You know, IRS has about an 83.6% voluntary compliance rate, and you want to keep that. You want to keep that. It's one of the best in the world.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. I'm sure there's a million other topics we could talk about. Eric, you know, every time I have a chance to pick your brain, I go as deep as I can in there. So I really appreciate you chatting with us. So please tell us about how people can find out more about you. If there's anything that you want to share, what's the best way to get in touch with you if someone wants to follow up on this discussion?
Yes, you can look me up on LinkedIn, Eric Hylton. I have kind of dual roles, the National Director of Compliance for Alliant Group, as well as the Director of Investigation for IRS. I mean, for CC, I've been with IRS for so many years for ZMF law firm. So kind of, you know, working in both space, but LinkedIn's probably the easiest to look me up and I will respond. I get quite a few questions or inquiries, and so definitely it's a good way to kind of look me up.
That's so good. Yeah, please don't hesitate to get in touch with Eric. He's very friendly. You can find out more about National Whistleblower Center at www.whistleblowers.org. That's whistleblowers with an S.org. You can also follow us on Twitter at Stop Fraud. You can find me on LinkedIn at Siri Nelson and on oh no, not on Instagram. You can find NWC on Instagram at National Whistleblower Center. You can also find us on LinkedIn just by searching National Whistleblower Center. And you can find me on Twitter at Siri Nelson Esquire. The best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in on this tax day. I know some of you are stressed, but hopefully this conversation helped you feel a little less stressed. And if you know something about fraud, please report it. Be a whistleblower. Help us all out. See ya.